Started.
So you have 4 DUIs there, Pauline. That's really nice. I thought you said you only had 1.
All rise and stand and remain standing.
Your people rise and stand, like you said.
This is a sovereign living ancient Al-Moroccan Article 3 Moorish American court action.
Court action, which is.
I am sovereign living justice, Pauline Denise Ritchie, in capitis diminuto nolo, in red ink, in proprio persona sui juris, in proprio solo, and in proprio haberes. We are the sovereign living justices and the ancient descendants and ascendants of the ancient pharaohs of Kemet and of the ancient Moabites and Canaanites. Our full faith, trust, allegiance, credit, energy is hereby vested in ourselves, for we are the people who are the original indigenous natural divine ancient empire state of Morocco and the de jure Moorish National Republic federal government, the Universal Moorish American Consulate, and the Moorish American Consular Court. We are peace. We are one nation. We are one state, one empire, and one God. We hereby exercise all sovereign rights at this time and at all points in time, non pro tunc. The first item to be placed on the table for us to note is that we have our 3-day full moon fast coming up on April the 15th, 16th, and 17th. The full moon is on the 16th, so we'll start our fast the day before. And you can do that fast however you choose to do the fast. Some will fast and do just water for the whole 3 days. Others will do sun up to sundown. And others will fast from various things such as negative energy, or they'll be fasting from television, or fasting from meat, or fasting from sugar, or fasting from food altogether and drinking just water. And some just do a liquid fast, some do sweet fast. It just depends on what you are led to do with regards to the fast. This fast is going to be really important. The reason we emphasize fasting in our nation is because it helps us to calm our minds and to discipline ourselves so that as we continue to move in the abundance of the vast estate, that we do so from a place of peace and from a place of not wanting to have so much of everything that we harm ourselves. Because I'm seeing where it's going to be really important for us to know how to say no to things that are being offered to us. Okay, we have to learn how to say no to, it can be anything in terms of large amounts of this, that, and this and that we think we might want. But there may be a better quality of that coming behind that. And so we need to first be able to say no to especially food. And when I say no to food, food is our friend. We love food. We eat, but we need to be disciplined in our mind and not be ruled by our appetite. That's going to be important as we begin to experience this abundance that's already starting to manifest. If you don't see the manifestation of the abundance yet, just keep looking. And when I say keep looking, I didn't notice it at first either, but it's coming in very slowly, very slowly. You look up and you see, there's plenty of fruit on the trees. There's plenty of, things manifesting. The abundance is manifesting. We have to know how to see it. Okay. And so fasting is going to help us to honor first our temples, and then also to honor moderation. It's going to be important Because when you can have everything that you want at any given time, it's going to be a situation where you say, okay, well, you know, today I'm not going to have all of that. That's a lot. I'm not going to have all of that. And we're just preparing ourselves for that which is already here. Now, at the same time, the moon is full in Libra. Libra is balance, it's justice, it's a work-play balance, which, you know, I have to work on that because I work a lot, but to me work that's my life. This ministry work is everything. And on April 16th at 2:55 p.m. Eastern Time, the moon will be full in Libra. So the full moon occurs on Saturday, April 16th, when the sun is in Aries position, and the position that it's in is going to be in opposition, which is balanced to the moon. So the sun and the moon will be balancing. Why is this important? It's important because the cosmos is telling us. First, it's continues to announce our grand rising to the whole earth, but it's also giving us some guidance on things to just be aware of. Okay. Additionally, April the 16th through the 20th will be a 5-planetary alignment, which is significant. It's a significant announcement in the cosmos regarding the grand rising. This is a time of the culmination, manifestation, and fulfillment of that which we began at the new moon. We are also fasting with intention to continue manifesting our state and our estate and nation's economic life. So if you have demonstrations that you want to do or that you've been looking to do and you want to prepare those demonstrations for the 15th through the 20th, the cosmos is going to put extra energy behind your demonstrations. So you have time to prepare. We all have time to prepare. Okay. So today's the 7th. We have time. That gives us about 7 or 8 days to prepare our demonstrations so that we can get them out and get everything sent out. Okay. Next on the agenda, the constitutions that we were talking about before the call started in the meeting before the meeting. Does your territory have its territorial constitution on the public record? We do intend to visit each territory that we receive a constitution from so that we can meet with the Moors in each of the territories and just discuss the constitutional, the territorial protocols and things that are in the Constitution with regard to commerce. It's going to be very important because those territorial constitutions make it so that we do commerce the way we want to do commerce. Okay? And how we've been doing those constitutions is going, for example, I'm at Washington Territory. So I went online and looked up the State of Washington Constitution, and then I took that Constitution and I put it in blue and put it on government letterhead, and then I began to go through it, pull out any feudal information in it, such as State of Washington and all of their capitalism and all of that. We did away with that in the Constitution. And we didn't have to change much of it because over time, we, the people, will be changing those constitutions as well. And again, we have the original Constitution for the United States, 1789 and 1791. That is our overarching Constitution, okay, for us as a united state, or the states united. And when we say state, we are saying original indigenous sovereign states that we govern. We have received so far, and thank you so much, And if I miss any, please let me know. We've received the Virginia Territory Constitution. We've received the Delaware Territory Constitution, the Washington Territory Constitution, the Nevada Territory Constitution, the Minnesota Territory Constitution, the Maryland Territory Constitution, the Alabama Territory Constitution, and the Michigan Territory Constitution. So the Moors that are in the territories have begun sending in the Constitution, and I could say a whole lot about why that is so important. We'll say more about that once we hit a certain plateau with those constitutions. We do need to receive them. If any territories that are presented here on this call, please, 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 with all that I just cannot emphasize enough, if you would go on to the internet, pull the Constitution for the territory that you're in, whether it be New Jersey Territory, Kentucky Territory, Texas Territory. Just go and pull the corporate one, pull it, look at it, copy and paste it onto government letterhead, put it in blue ink, and some have been coming in capitis diminution nolo, which means no capital letters, and that's fine, and some have been coming with some capital letters, and that's fine. And then go through and just pull out anything that says state of whatever, state of this and state of that, because it's Washington Territory, it's New Jersey Territory, it's the territories. We need those from all of the territories, all of them, because what we're doing is we're putting our commerce on the public record, our ability to do lawful commerce as the original indigenous, sovereign, ancient, natural, divine heirs that we are, so that we can use our own money. What we don't want to do is you know, we don't want to go back to fiat and be relying on that stuff, okay? And again, we're not bashing anyone who does, but we're not going to continue relying on something that's been that's had the heirs not looking like heirs and not walking like heirs and not, you know, not living like the heirs that we are. We're the heirs. We should, you know, there's a certain way that heirs should be moving and presenting, and we shouldn't. I mean, you know, you all know what I mean about how we've been really, really living far beneath our rightful status. And so what the things that we're doing, we're taking that fiat energy out of what we're doing. And again, we're not bashing anybody that's still using fiat and things like that. We're not bashing anyone. What we use is sovereign credits because we terminated all corporate contracts on bank accounts and things like that. And then what we're also doing is putting delarium on everything that we do. Everything that we do. So the constitutions are going to be so important for that. So if you're on the call and you're in whatever territory that you're in as we proceed with our voting process, if you'll state your territory as we go through that process and let us know where you are, what territory you're in, that would be helpful so that we can start seeing where these constitutions are coming in at, okay? And if you have not placed a constitution, sent us a constitution, please send us one for your territory, and you can send it to thegovernment@gmail.com. And even if you are with other nations and governments and territories and provinces, if you want to do the same and send us your constitution at thegovernment@gmail.com, please feel free to do that. Okay, so because we are going to, we want to honor all of the Moorish governments in the different provinces and territories. And we want to work together so that we can continue to manifest our vast estate. Okay. And there's the email on the screen for where to send your constitution, so that we can note that we have received the constitution from that territory, and that when you see our commerce coming through there, you're welcome to it as well. Okay, so we want to be sure that that we know that all of us unite in this manner. Okay, and we want to honor your commerce as well. If there are any nations and governments, Moorish nations and governments who have their own currency, please let us know, so that we can exchange currencies and honor one another's currencies and economic life, and then support it in however we can. Okay. So with that being said, last week we talked about, or it's not last week, it was actually Sunday, we discussed the sale of public lands affidavit vote based on the 16th Congress. Now, some might not see why it is that we're taking the time to do these types of votes. But let's get the constitutions on the record so I can speak freely about what's really going on. I'm not at liberty to speak freely right now. We've not reached our goal yet with regard to the Constitution. Please, Moors, regardless of what territory you're in, send in the Constitution for your territory with your right red thumbprint and your red autograph on it. And if you need Moorish government letterhead to put it on, we can assist with that as well. Okay, so just let us know. You can text me and say, hey, send me the Moorish government letterhead. My text number is 334-294-9828, and I am like Tajiri Bay, in capital Fiduciary, no in red ink, in Copia Persona Juris, in Copia Solo, and Copia Heredes. And we thank you so much, the Moors who sent in these constitutions. So the sale of public lands affidavit. I'll go ahead and put this link in the chat so that you can see the original of where this came from. And then we'll take a look at the one that that we have written, and here, just one moment. Okay, here it is. Just one moment. I'll put that link in the chat. Here it is. Okay. Okay. There's the link to the original. Okay. Grand rising indeed, mobility. And let's see. Okay. So the link is in the chat. We looked at it on Sunday, and now we want to take the time to look at the way that we present these types of documents. And this will be an example that you can use for sending in the constitutions. All we did was look at the public law, And when we looked at the public law, we rewrote it. We took from it, we copied and pasted it onto moorishe government letterhead, and then we went through it, we studied it. Any words that we might not have been sure about, or any feudal language, we looked it up. And when you're doing your documents, if there's a word that you're not quite sure about even after looking it up, just spell it slightly differently from the way that it was spelled in the feudal system, and it will mean what you intend for it to mean, okay? And that way jurisdiction is preserved in your spirit, okay? And it comes out in your writing that way as well. And that's the purpose of ancient English as well, is just to ensure that that the information that we put on our documents is pure and uncorrupted. Okay. As usual, we start all of our documents with the court action language. And let me put the document on the screen. Okay. We start with the court action language. And then we put whatever we're writing, we put it in blue. Okay. And this one, we did use some capitalism because, again, the fiduciary document for our state says that this is our capitalism and no one else's. That's important because whoever it is that's in control of the capitalism, whichever state it is, because states control capitalism, that's why all states have a capital. Nations have a capital. And the reason nations have a capital, they call it a capital because you're in control of the capitalism, which is the financial system. And so our state has taken complete control over the capitalism that has to do with us. And each more can do that for themselves as well by putting the fiduciary document on the public record and leaning the United States Corporation Company's ability to do the capitalism for you. Now, I'll say this about the fiduciary document. There are some Moors who don't feel that they're competent enough to be fiduciaries for their own vast estate, and they have actually chosen for the subjects to continue being fiduciaries. Well, that's okay, but subjects are not really, that's not really anything that they do. So then that just means that the state reverts your fiduciary, the fiduciary responsibilities with regard to your estate revert back to the state if you choose not to do it. If you choose not to be competent to do it, not to speak to the system by affidavit. And we've shown how that is done for those who have said that they don't want to be the fiduciary for their own vast estate, that they want the subjects to continue to be the fiduciary and letting subjects pretend to be a treasury and pretend to be a court and pretend to be this and that. I would not suggest that Moors do that. I would suggest that we go ahead and get competent on fiduciary responsibility. It's very simple. Fiduciaries speak for themselves and for the resource that they're governing, and they do it by government affidavit. It's period. And you speak to that resource and tell that resource what to do. And when the custodians receive the affidavit, they will ensure that the system does what it's supposed to do. And that puts the honor back into the system. Because the system, foreigners don't have a system here on this land. Foreigners don't have a system. They don't own anything. It's our system. We're supposed to govern it. And I get that some are uncomfortable with that, and it's okay, because over time, as you see things happening with regard to the vast estate, I have found that when things make us uncomfortable enough, we will take the time to learn it. When we get tired of someone else telling us what to do with our own, we know we're the heirs, we will learn what we need to learn and remember what we need to remember and take control of what we need to take control of. So I'll say this, the Constitution would be the state charter, nobility in the chat. There's one of the nobles who's saying that they were having a problem locating the state charter. Any suggestions? The Constitution is a state charter, and then county charters is what you want to convert also, and make sure that you do a reversion on that, on county charters. Okay, and then with states' constitutions, that you're reverting that back to, it's going from being a corporation that policy enforcers were saying, you know, you're in the state of this and state of that, as they issue tickets and things like that. That is not happening in our on our territories, in our territories. Okay, but we have to have a constitution on the public record for our territory. And again, we have the overarching Constitution for the United States, 1789 and 1791. And then and now we're doing it for our territory. Okay, just one moment. Let me. Okay, so no, they're not. County charters are charters. They're not constitutions, they're charters. When you think of charters, nobility, think of chartering a boat. Think of chartering a boat, okay? And that's why charters are so important. It tells us, again, where we're located. And that's why we're putting the county charters on the public record. And when we put them on the public record again, we do the same thing. I looked up the King County Charter. I looked it up and then copied and pasted onto our letterhead and put it in blue, and then studied, looked through, pull out anything corporate, you know, and there's not a whole lot that needed to be pulled out. Just wherever it said, County of Kings, or anything in all capital letters, or sometimes it would say, you know, whatever it said. Yes, yes, in our UK territory, yes. Justice, yes, in the chat. You all do the same thing. Look up any constitutions or land charters, because you all have a charter there. In fact, the Magna Carta is another one that needs to be put on the public record by you all as well as us. We're all doing the same thing. So yes, at UK territory, do you do the same thing for the UK? Yes. Yes. And thank you for governing that land. Thank you so much for that. Just one moment. One moment. Okay. I think they put themselves out. So, with that being said, let's go over the document that we had. Did everyone have an opportunity to look over the document, hopefully you did between that day and this day. Hopefully you had an opportunity to look over the document and see. Okay. Thank you, Justice Yakub. And thank you also, Islam Justice Mitchell. Justice Yakub, thank you because for giving us another some extra time on this document. We needed it, actually. So let's see. I want to take it out of lecture mode and put it in. Okay, you all, the Holy Quran. Yes, Justice Frank, absolutely, yes. So let's go ahead and discuss the document, because I see in the chat Justice Yakub has put something in the chat, and you all can unmute yourselves. You can just *6 to unmute yourself. Justice Yakub, I see what you're saying. Okay. Go ahead, Justice Yakub, if you want to speak on what you're saying about the document.
Hey, Dorothy Holm, suck my dick. Dorothy Holm, I tell you to suck my...
Oh my, oh my, oh my. That's not
It's okay.
polite.
That's okay. Don't,
Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah, go ahead.
in terms of the some points that I identified. This is Justice Yakub Ali here.
Yes.
Okay, so the private sales, you know, you can easily foresee that could lead to some form of corruption because it's not public, right? So at least
how come nobody's trying to buy gas using Pauline's phony money? Why don't you guys try and buy gas?
I think it would be best if we don't.
Go ahead, Nobility.
Yeah, I think it would be best if we don't do that. Don't do it in any secret manner. And that's number one. And then number two was there's a part that speaks of Ohio. Well, I took some screenshots from last Congress, right? So I couldn't read the thing in entirety, but what I was able to read in section 3, we spoke. There's a part about Ohio and Indiana, which may not apply anymore.
Yes.
That's my offering. Islam.
So, with regard to the public and private, well, let's talk about section 3 briefly. I took those two out. I wanted to do a little bit of research on them. Hold on one second. There's a little bit of noise coming from one of the lines. I wanted to do a little bit of research on why those two states were mentioned. But in the interest of the fact that we can amend any laws that we put out there, I just took that part out in section 3. I saw that. It was right down here on the screen. And I just put here at all states instead of just those two. Okay. And we can read through what we have on the screen here just so that, you know, for clarification. And then with regard to the private part, the private sale, I thought about that too, Justice Yakub. And if it was just my document that I was putting out there for me, I wouldn't care about the private part. But I do know that Moors want land that they can give to their heirs, as opposed to land that we use for government purposes. Because I'm looking at it strictly from empire and from growth of our vast estate and empire, and things that we can, you know, lands that we can farm, lands that we can build on, lands that we can excavate on, and things like that, so that we can put building government structures that look like our government structures, okay? We know that the biggest mosques and all of that was actually where we did our government business, and where our children were given erudition and all of that. And so I'm looking at it from that perspective with regards to the public, and that's the reason why this is so important, you know, from the perspective of our state. But the private part, I know that there are Moors who are going to want a certain amount for their heirs as well. And I noticed in all of the land patents that were done for us, by the way, 160 acres was the most. They pretty much stuck to this with the majority of the land patents. They pretty much stuck to this document right here, where people would come and buy land, and whenever they bought the land, they would section it off, like as stated in this document. So this document and the land patents match. And that's where the private land comes in at, because some want to have their whole clan on their land with them. And I would want that too, if my clan would agree to do it, you know, because they're so independent. But that's what the private land would be for. It's up to 160 acres, you know, per whatever. And then if it gets beyond 160 acres, then you're talking something for government use or public use. Does that add any more clarity to it? Because some lands we're going to want just our clan there, but the majority of the land will be for our estate, for our government.
Question, land-wise, by law-wise and universal law, every person or everyone or every individual being should have land to cultivate food for his family and his flock, shelter and clothing. So in private, as an individual, I think land should be given to individual as part of the estate, governed by the people that claim the natural status of the land. Because a natural being claiming belongs to the land or ties to the land should have their own estate or piece of land. Government to them
that's what the document is laying out. It's clarifying that.
Okay.
Yeah, this document is clarifying that. But we do have to, there has to be a commercial exchange on the public record. And when we say commercial exchange, you already know it's about gold-backed Moorish sovereign dollarium as the method of exchange for gold or silver, but gold specifically, gold and Moorish sovereign dollarium. So everyone can have their own vast estate, but I'll say this about that. Our main goal and our most important top priority. Just one moment. Empress Shatali, there's a little bit of static coming from your line. I want to make sure that this part is made clear with regard to all land and all natural resources and all commerce. Our first priority is our government, our state, our nation. So my own personal whatever, 40 acres or 160 acres or whatever, that is secondary to the the government and the state and the needs of the government and the needs of the state. And that has to be the priority for everyone because government and state come first. Because we have no protection otherwise. The protection of our property comes by way of us maintaining the state, the government. We see that. We can see that clear as day. We can see that. I mean, think about more foreigners were able to come here and pretend to be the state and stop you from getting to property because they put the state first. And it's not even a real state, it was a corporation. We should never have that problem again, ever. And that is why, again, we can look at land from, you know, me, my 3, and me, my 4, and no more. We can look at it that way, but that's a dangerous way to look at land and getting things and acquiring things on our vast estate. That's a dangerous way. If you put that first, you're headed for trouble. Headed for trouble, and we're not going there. That's not where we're going. It's government, nation, state first. Government and nation and state first. Because when Moors get hungry, they need to have a temple that they can go to and get what they need. And that temple is not necessarily going to be on my little land here. It's just going to be on public land where anyone can come and get what they need and get the information that they need to get their own land and their own estate. That is the perspective that we must take. Our ancestors took the same perspective, and that is why all we had to do was stand up and say who we are, because the ancestors put some things in place for us that are unmovable by any court or corporation. And so, you know, yes, we're talking about land for each and every Moor. Each and every Moor. There's enough for everybody. There's enough for everybody. But we have to do it competently. It has to be done in an orderly manner. And it has to be done. It can't be done with corporate state fiat. It can't. But see, we've already tried that more. We've been down that road trying to get houses and cars and all of that. And I'm saying that, I'm using that language because that's what that was in feudal, in our sleep. Trying to get this and get that using their fiat that they made sure they kept from us. And so, you know, we're not mad at them. They just showed us how to do it. They showed us how to put exchanges on the public record using our money. But there has to be order. There has to be law in place. It can't be chaotic, and it can't be about me, and selfish this and selfish that, and me, my 4, and no more. It's got to be state first, government first, because our protection is there. Because it's by way of the state and the government that the enforcement comes when you're talking about police and military and security. All of that comes by way of state and constitution, etc., so that there are no free radicals running around doing whatever. But that we stay on one accord together and use the law to get the things that we want and that we need. But we have to make sure the all is okay. Everyone has to needs a place that if anything happens, we got to have a way for everybody to get what they need. Everybody. And when I say everybody, we're talking about the citizens too. But the citizens are not going to get what they need if we don't get what we need. Come on. Now, let's just be clear about that. Okay? So it's not that we're taking anything from anybody that doesn't already belong to us. We're not taking anything from anyone. In fact, it was all listed as abandoned. But it's not. We're here. Are there any other comments? And Justice Yakub, did I expand on that private part, the private part of this document? And we can read through it because I made some changes.
Okay.
You may want for you and your heirs to have a piece that is not public. You know, for you all to go to retreat to, you know.
I agree with the seek first the kingdom, seek first the empire, and then the others, which is the private, will be added. All right. In terms of private, I was seeing it as a literal sale. So think about it as we have a public sale for 1,000 acres divided into the amount that we have to have it. And 3 people turn up and they purchase what they can afford, and then it moves from a public sale to a private sale. So instead of having it now at a public site where everyone could come to view the sale, you now have it in a chamber, in a private chamber, and only my friends are invited. And one of those friends purchases everything else. And nobody could tell what actually happened in that private chamber. So that's the idea that I'm thinking in terms of private and public. The sale itself, not the use of the land, but the process or the exchange.
So the process for private land goes on the public record. It still does. I mean, you can go on the public record now and you'll see transactions that were supposed to be private, that were between 2 people private. Because, see, even the private stuff has to be properly recorded. So it's not going to be that no one will know what happened with that land. Everyone's going to know.
But it will happen after the fact. So you, instead of getting 150 acres, you have 1,000 acres. Or you have 3,000 acres, which some people do have.
That's great. Why? That's great.
So to avoid corruption, it's always the sale of it. It's always public, not necessarily the use of the land, but the sale, the transaction happens by bidding publicly. Islam.
I would say this about that. First and foremost, we cannot get rid of the private based on the fact that someone thinks that, or we think that people might not act in honor. We can't chunk the whole private piece just because of where we came from. We actually have to, they're innocent. The process is innocent until someone does something that is not honorable. The process, though, it has to remain because it's part and parcel of everything. Public and private is part and parcel. We can't rob the Moors who want 40 acres for themselves or 160 for themselves. We can't rob them of the private, that private right, because it's a right. It's a right when done properly. We can't rob them of that just because we think they might be dishonorable. We can't. That's now I will say this, and not everybody feels this way, and I'm not saying everybody feels this way, but I'm saying from what I know and what I've seen about this whole process that we're doing, the ancestors already know if we're coming at it with some ugly energy or some selfish energy or some energy that needs to be cleared, the ancestors will not let things go forward until we get that energy right. And so for me, I trust all of the Moors. Some might think that that's naive, but it's not. You know why I trust all Moors? Because I'm competent enough to verify. Trust but verify. And when verification happens, there are mechanisms in place. So I'm not even worried about corrupt, all of that. I'm not worried about it. And I'm not, from our perspective, I think that it's a wise thing to approach these processes from a place that everyone is honorable, that the process is honorable. Let me put it that way. That the process is honorable, and then that there are things in place in case someone tries to corrupt the process. You know, but we don't want to rob the Moors who have worked so hard and want and deserve their 40 acres or their 160 acres or their 80 acres or whatever. It is their right to have it. It's their right.
Islam.
That is their right. You know, and so
Islam.
Islam.
I think we mixing up the private use and the private sale. You can have a public sale and use the land privately. Okay, public just means everybody could be present to see the sale happen, and then you purchase your acreage for you and your family. That is private use. Okay, the document we are looking at says private sale, which means just 2 or 3 people get together and sell something. That is done privately. Okay.
And I don't see anything wrong with 2 or 3 people getting together and selling things private. But private is not really private because there's going to be a state presentment involved, because you got to get the land from the state, and then it has to be properly recorded and all of that. It has to be properly recorded, and if the state sees something that's not properly recorded, they'll just say, that's not properly recorded. It looks like, you know, that was something done behind closed doors, but the rules say you can't do that.
Permission, one question. When you state that the use of the land is private and public sale, are you talking from the corporation level? Because this seems to be talking from the corporation level in the system when you're talking about the sales of land and private use. Private use as a land is for private people who is sovereign people.
Yes.
That we're talking about. She's not talking about private as a corporation. You are talking about corporation. That's where I get from you. And you're mixing up the whole thing. Because corporation, your policy of corporation law is not indigenous law. Our law, and what is stated here, is something totally different from what you're talking about. If you can read it properly, if you always don't look at it as constitutional law. Because the Constitution is taken away from this law here. So it is saying that every private person that within the Constitution has authority and the right as a private person to claim their own piece of land, which is 160 acres or 80 acres. It has nothing to do with third-party sale. Now, if you want to talk about third-party sale, you got 3 people present, and you're making a private sale, that's a person between you and selling your own personal property. But that has nothing to do with the jurisdiction of this law here right now. So you're getting caught between constitutional law and private law, all land law and constitutional law. You're dealing with the constitutional law of corporation. This is not corporation law. This is the difference. Asher.
Yeah. So public is here, let me make sure I note this. Does what he said resonate at all, Justice Yaqub? I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. I get what you're saying, that there could be some dishonor among the three people doing a private sale in a chamber. I see what you're saying there. But it's not really going to be a private sale. That's because there's the state is involved. The state is involved in all sales of all land. And the state will know when something is not honorable because it's not going to meet the protocol. And that's why I'm glad we're having this conversation, because we're putting that in place right now, because the sale of the land is happening. And when we say sale, we spell it a little differently again, because we're not talking about feudal buying and selling. We're talking about exchange. Yes, Empress Shatali put in the chat the remedies also. And that's why I said there are mechanisms in place, because if there's any injury to a moor, there is court. Yes, and these are actually going to be done by court action. And if there be any controversy, it goes to court. That's why we have to have our own court managing our own land. The structure is in place to ensure that honor is maintained in the whole system. That's why we had to have our own courts. We had to be speaking by court action and doing the things we're doing, and now put constitutions. Because even if you look at the territorial constitution, they're going to give some direction on commerce and how it should be done honorably. You know, and that's why it's important that we get them on the public record for all of the territories as soon as possible, by the way, too, as soon as possible. So, you know, let's read through what is written here. Let's read through, because I did make some changes, and we'll discuss it further if we need to do that. So, Section 1, it says, be this law created by the Senate and House of Representatives, which is us, for the United States, which is, again, us, for America,
Islam,
in Congress assembled, which is us. Yes, did you say something, Empress? In fact, let me make sure I put that on the screen. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Islam.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes. Thank you. Islam.
Okay. Great. My apologies, Empress. Thank you so much. Okay. It says, be this law created by the Senate and House for Representatives for the United States for America, in Congress assembled, that from and after the first day of July, all the public lands, and here we can put, let me just make sure we specify which July. All the public lands at the United States, the constitutional sale of which is or may be authorized by law shall, when offered at public sale to the highest bidder, be offered in half-quarter sections, and when offered at private sale, may be purchased at the option of the purchaser, either in entire sections, half sections, quarter sections, or half-quarter sections. And in every case of the division of a quarter section, the line for the division thereof shall run north and south, and the corners and contents of half-quarter sections which may thereafter be sold shall be ascertained in the manner and on the principles directed and prescribed by the second section of a law entitled A Law Concerning the Mode of Surveying the Public Lands of the United States, passed on the 6th day of April, 1443. And fractional sections containing 160 acres or upwards shall in like manner, as nearly as practicable, be subdivided into half-quarter sections under such rules and regulations as may be prescribed by the Secretary for the Treasury. But fractional sections containing less than 160 acres shall not be divided, but shall be sold entire, provided that this section shall not be construed to alter any special provision made by law for the sale of land in town lots. So, again, we are the United States, which is the States United. We are that, and we're not any foreign corporation. We are the land. We are the States United. We are at America. So we want to make that clear as we're talking, because, and that's another reason why we're putting the constitutions for the territories on the public record. And then any state that come thereafter, any moorishe states that join in thereafter are party as well. So that's why we say the United States for America, as opposed to any other, state as an individual. Okay, and the United States for America is part and parcel of the Empire State of Morocco. Always has been and always will be, and it's always been us and not any foreigners. And there's also the United States for Africa and the United States for Asia, et cetera, et cetera. Those are actually the United States for Mexico. Those are part of the Empire State of Morocco. So all this is saying is that even whether it's public or private, there are metes and bounds, and those metes and bounds are sections, half-quarter sections, quarter sections, half sections, etc. Okay, and we did put July. We'll start this in July 1443 on the first day, since this is April, and then we'll be going into May. That will give us the time to continue putting the proper documentation in place. We're just, and we have everything in place. We just want to ensure that we publicly put it on the public record that this is going on, so that proper notification takes place, both of the Moors and of the subjects, because the custodians play a part in this also. Okay, and we'll read that further. And then where they're talking about town lots, there are Moorish developers who have a certain, they have 160. So let's just say they'll have a half-quarter section, and in that half-quarter section, it's going to be less than the amounts listed here for a lot. And because of the way that they're building, they can do that. That's why the lots, the town lots, are the exception to the rule. Okay. So they're saying here the fractional section can only be done by way of town lot. And a town lot, again, if there's a Moor who has 160 acres and he wants to subdivide that up and build, 10 domiciles on the his acreage, and ensure that those lots are for sale to those who want to buy them, then he can do that. Okay. And the question in the chat is, which document is this? It's the one that we talked about last week. In fact, I will try and pull that document up. Let me just see. Oh, I put it in the chat. I put the document in the chat earlier. Yes, Justice Consul, United States of Great Britain as well. Yes, Islam. Yes, it is. Here's the link, Justice Jade, for this. The original, and it's not the original, it's a copy of the original that our ancestors did. Okay. Part 2 says, and be it further the law that debt shall not be allowed for the purchase money on the sale of any of the public lands which shall be sold after the first day of May 1443, 2022. But every purchaser of land sold at public sale thereafter shall on the day of purchase make complete payment therefor. Remember, Moors, we've always said that everything is prepaid. We actually have the authority to prepay it. And so even in that system that we just removed, everything was prepaid too when it came to land and houses. As soon as the heirs gave their signature, whoever it was that was supposedly selling it, they got paid, and we know this about the promissory notes and things like that, that they got paid immediately with the autograph. Okay? And all we're doing is manifesting that again. This is nothing new. What we're doing is not new in terms of the processes. It's just that it's being done and governed by us instead of by custodians. Okay? And so everything was prepaid even then. And this document, I just love this document because it lays out how that takes place. So right here, we'll start reading here. It says, and the purchaser at private sale shall produce to the recorder at the land office a receipt from the treasurer of the United States or from the receiver of public monies of the district for the amount of the purchase money on any tract before he shall enter the same at the land office. So you have to show that it was paid for and that you have a receipt for that land before you go to the land office and have it recorded. And if any natural person, being the highest bidder at public sale for a tract of land, shall fail to make payment therefor on the day on which the same was purchased, the tract shall be again offered at public sale on the next day of sale, and such natural person shall not be capable of becoming the purchaser of that or any other tract offered at such public sales. I thought about this and I thought maybe we should take this out. But then I thought about it and I said, you know, maybe we can discuss that if that happens 3 times, more than 3 times, then they cannot be a purchaser. What do you all think about limiting that to, because again, first of all, the natural Moors have the ability to prepay everything. We have that ability. And so, but what we don't want is one more going around to all the different places and outbidding and then not paying and having that be a habit, you know. And I can see where maybe once or twice that happens, where they didn't pay on that day, but there's really no excuse for not paying on that day because we have the means to do so. So, but I still thought, you know, maybe 3 times, if that happened more than 3 times, or we can leave it as is. What do you think? Then you can start 6 to speak on that piece or any other piece that we've read so far.
Islam, Yaqub here, I think 3 is a good number.
Yes. 3 is a good number?
Yes.
Did you say 3 or 2?
3.
3. Islam. Anyone else want to? I'm okay with 3. I see 3 in the chat. 3 is always a good number. Yes, that's one of our numbers as well. So are there any objections? Thank you, Justice Murphy and Empress Danielle. Justice Malik, thank you as well. Are there any objections to changing that number? Thank you, Empress Chakali. Are there any objections to changing that to 3? If there are any objections to changing that to 3, then please speak now. Is this wording okay as we move forward on this document? In fact, let me make sure that it's on. Yeah, it's on the screen. Yes, thank you, Justice Constantine, Justice Michael, Justice Morley, thank you. Yes, 3. So we've changed it to 3 if that occurs 3 times. 3 times. Yeah, if that occurs 3 times. Okay. We'll move on to Section 3. Is there any objection to moving on to Section 3 or any questions about Sections 1 and 2? This is how government is done. Star 6, please, if you have any objections to moving on. It's fine. Okay. Section 3, and be it further the law that from and after the first day of May, 1443, the price at which the public land shall be offered for sale shall be 200 dalarium an acre. 200 dalarium an acre. Excuse me. Hold on. Okay. Okay, my apologies. So, Section 3. And be it further the law that from and after the first day of May, 1443, 2022, the price at which the public land shall be offered for sale shall be 200 dalarium an acre. And at every public sale, the highest bidder who shall make payment as aforesaid shall be the purchaser. But no land shall be sold either at public or private sale for a less price than 200 dollarium an acre. And all the public lands which shall have been offered at public sale before the 1st day of May, 1443, and which shall then remain unsold, as well as the lands that shall thereafter be offered at public sale according to law, and remain unsold at the close of such public sale, shall be subject to be sold at private sale by entry at the land office at 200 dollarium an acre, to be paid at the time of making such entry as aforesaid. With the exception, however, of the lands which may have reverted to the United States for failure in payment, and of the heretofore reserved sections for the further disposal of Congress at all states which shall be offered at public sale as hereinafter directed. So, are there any questions or comments about the $200 dollarium per acre? $200 dollarium per acre. Okay.
Islam.
Section Islam mobility.
Section 3 again. We're talking about thousands and thousands of acres of public land, right? And we're stating that May, after May, that land, having been offered as a public sale, can then, twice it appears, then can go into private sales, right? And it doesn't make any provision for them to go back into public sales. It suggests, the wording suggests that it will remain in the domain of private sales, right? So I would like to propose that it happens maybe every 3 years, every 9 years, or whatever it is that we choose, that we have a grand public sale, not just once and then that's it. That the Act says every 9 years, or every one book says every the Bibliocilitic says the land supposed to revert at the end of the time of Jubilee, you know. So there's a period when it will come around again, at either 7 years or something like that. That we have a, you know, not just once and that's the last of it.
Well, this is going to be an ongoing. The sale of public lands is ongoing until. So, with regard to reverting back to, in the event that, are you asking about in the event, or stating that in the event that that the private sale, whoever bought it at the private sale doesn't want it anymore? Is that what you're saying?
Okay, so from the Bibliocilitic, if I purchase land that was originally allodial land, that was Pauline Ritchie's family's allodial land, I am leasing it from you. I'm leasing it from you for a period of time. At the end of that period of time, it's yours. It goes back to you. So, no, I don't think anybody necessarily. All the land belongs to the Empire of Morocco. So
yes,
we don't necessarily have to think of it as owning the land, but using the land. You know.
Yes.
So after a period of time, if you're not there, you passed on, then the land goes back to the use of the state. Right? Or
Yes,
the empire, it goes back to the public inventory.
I think he's talking about a maturity date as far as trust documents are concerned, because all of this land acquisition and changing of, you know, estates and things on public records is just nothing more than trust documents being established. But then the maturity date, that's what he's really referring to as to when, you know, the contract is matured, and then it reverts back to Lynn Morocco when it comes to doing business with foreigners on this landmass. I think that's what he's getting at.
Yes. Thank you, Empress. Yes. So at the 50-year mark, it goes back to the state like it is now. We are actually at the Jubilee time, and that's why we have the authority to do what we're doing. So all land has gone back to the people, which is the state. That's us. And we're just preparing now to engage in gaining, you know, the claiming of the land. That's what we're doing now. Okay. So it does at maturity, and maturity would be 50 years for it to go back, for all land to go back to the state, because all debt goes away. Okay. All land has gone back to the state, which is us. We're the state. And if there's maybe 7 years or something like that, and a contract that you choose to do matures, and let's say someone passes on and there's no one, they haven't left it to anyone, it goes back to the state as well, and it will go back into what we've previously known as probate, and then it will go again back to the state and then back into sale. Does that answer the question? Does that address the issue? Go ahead, Empress.
Islam. So further upon thought and meditation, to hinder or stop or dissuade any foreigner coming in and capitalizing on trust law and putting the land into a trust so it can be passed from family member to family member, and find some type of loophole in the system that we have established. Put the express language in the instrument to express that, you know, foreigners, or however you want to state, that hybrids, or however anyone doing business other than a Moorish national cannot put said land into a trust to find a loophole to gain a foothold in our vast estate again. Islam.
So let me clarify then, because see, number one, when we're discussing these types of processes, energetically, we approach these processes energetically from a place of everyone being in honor and everyone being, because it's a process. Again, there are stipulations. I mean, think about the question, Empress. They don't have a foothold now, even after all that has happened. They still don't have a foothold, because all we had to do was stand up and be competent. So,
agreed.
You see what I'm saying? So we don't really even have to. We don't have to change anything. We don't, because it's been in place since time immemorial, and they know their place. They know their place. So we're not even concerned. It's our job to pass this information forward so that doesn't happen again. where we thought that they had something that we didn't have. Okay, so that's actually going to come into play, and that's why I said what I said about the state and the nation and the government being first. Because as long as we keep our state, nation, and government first, erudition is always going to be put forward to the heirs. We're always going to have places where the heirs can come and hear who they are, know these processes, and never go give their capitalism to someone else. You know, and so that's why when we approach these processes, we don't. It is suggested that energetically we approach it from a place of not of colonizers coming in stealing, because they still haven't stolen a darn thing. They haven't made off with anything. Everything is still here. We just have to keep giving the information to our heirs. They can't steal anything. All we did was miss that capitalism part for a minute. You know, but we got it. We got that now. And then we needed to be a state, and we needed to unify and all of that. But to me, that's all erudition. That's not necessarily a function of the process. The process is going to do what it does and what it's been doing. The process has been such that when the heirs are competent, no one can touch anything that belongs to us, that we have the authority to do that. You know, and that is why state and nation and government comes first, because an individual it's harder for an individual to try and put things forward and maintain everything and keep everything straight if the state is not with you. As long as we keep our state, our nation, our government first, even as we do these things. And I'll say one last thing about this. In the bibliotext, there's some scriptures in, I believe it's Habakkuk, that talks about our ancestors, whom they call the Lord, asking us, are your individual domiciles more important than the whole, the temple, the all, the house? Because once we did this, because we've been here before, and we put our domiciles first in remodeling the home and making sure the big giant domicile is tight, and we partying and all of that, and state went out the window, government went out the window, nation went out the window. So as a function of this process, we don't have to even talk about foreigners. We don't have to talk about them in our processes. We do have to talk about them in our temples and our erudition and the way that we have been doing. But as far as the law is concerned, we don't have to put anything in there to block them out, because there was never any way for anyone to come in unless we consented to let them in. You know. So hopefully, it sheds some light on the fact that if we start injecting that energy into what we're doing, that means that prospectively, if we should forget who we are, which we're not going to do, but if we start injecting that energy in there, it could confuse some of the Moors that are coming along the way. Whereas if we just speak the law to the land and make it clear about the land, we mention in here natural persons. That means that the natural people, that's who this is for. And that's another reason why we were led to this, is because it speaks specifically about the natural people. So, there's a reason why you don't see anything about citizens can't do this and citizens can't do that. Because even in that past economies, there's those of us who did really well in the past economies. I'm not one of those people who did, like, I'm not like Oprah or anybody like that, so I am not talking about me. But I'm talking about, you know, the system made it so that some could do well, you know, and we have to do the same in this system, where even some of the citizens can do okay in the system, but ultimately the system should look like the creators of the system. And, you know, the wealth should look like the creators of the wealth. So that's why we generally don't put anything in there about, and you'll never hardly see them say, these people are not eligible for that, or these people are not eligible for that. That's what corporations do. Because, again, citizens can't have not made off with any part of our estate. You know. Are there any other input on that with regard to, you know, the language?
Yeah, to just reiterate, this is Yakub again. So after we see 1443, 2022, right, that's halfway in section 3. And which shall then remain unsold, as well as the lands that shall thereafter be offered at public sale, according to law, and remain unsold at the close of such public sales, shall be subject to be sold at private sale by entry at the land office at $200 an acre. So it was not sold at a public auction. So the lands now are subject to be sold at private sales. So according to this, we have a date, a specific date, right? Which is first day of May, that all the lands, all the public lands are made available. This is a huge land mass we're talking about.
Yes.
Okay. So it is very unlikely that all of this is going to be sold publicly in May. Therefore, from thereafter, the wording here suggests that any more with 200 alarium could make a private exchange, right, for acreage, right, on any day after that. After that period has expired, right, it doesn't say anything about another public sale. So what I was suggesting is that every 3 years or every 5 years or 7 years or something like that, we stipulate we're going to have public sales.
So
otherwise,
we can have a public sale every 30 days. We can have a public sale every 30 days because that's how they were doing when they were showing us how to govern. They were having public sales every 30 days, and then in some places it was once a year. But the once a year ones was quote unquote tax-free sales, which is like the ones that they're talking about where failure to make payment was done and all of that. But we can have public sales every month. Every month, every 30 days if you want. And that's why we didn't put any end date to what's going on. Okay. We could have it every week if we choose to have it. We just need the Moors to manage it, to govern it. Okay. It starts on the first day of May. But much of it is going to remain unsold and can be sold, is subject to be sold at a private sale. subject to be sold at a private sale just means it could be, or maybe it'll just stay on the books until the next sale. If it's not sold at a private sale, it'll stay on the books as a public sale. The governing portion, we'll talk about that in just a minute. Justice Yaku, so it's up to us as to whether we want to have it, how often we want to have a public sale. It is my, with what we have going on right now, I think that it should be just an ongoing sale, every day, but we just make sure that we that it's recorded with the land offices and things like that. Because in each of the now this is where notification of the quote unquote tax assessor and all of that, the processes that we've already done by affidavit, this is where all of that comes in at. But again, like I was stating earlier, you have to have that commercial exchange on the public record with diallarium. And you have to create the title and all of that. And then you just, make sure that it gets on the public record by you first, and then you notify the others. Okay? So all the things that we've been doing was leading up to this, and then after this, there's more to come. We are actually activating the Jubilee. We're actually activating that. So, Justice Yaku, how often do you think we should have a public sale? I mean, what would be your recommendation?
I think if it's a grand sale, every 7 years sounds good to me.
Every 7
is
years?
a good number.
What about the people who want to do it before then? Because there'll be heirs who want to do it, who want to buy land regularly. What about them?
Right. Well, that wouldn't be a grand public sale. That would be a county public sale. But at this level here, we're talking about the entire empire.
Yes.
We're talking about the whole continent, and so on.
Yes.
So, Islam.
Yes, that's what you're talking about. But it's always been that way. It's always been that way, that everything was for sale, and we just need to step up and do the sale and all of that. Well, during the sale, we went through that process. We went over that whole sale process a year ago, and how that is to be done. So it can, the sale of the land is going to be ongoing. More who want to, after we have the public sale, the public sale really it's essentially in the works. In other words, we should be researching land and looking at different lands and things like that. We should be looking at all of that right now, doing our research, pulling things up, looking to see if there are any land patents on it or anything like that we need to rebut, or if the land patent is in our family, the ancient title of the title of nobility. For example, my last appellation is Ritchie. Okay, it's Ritchie and Moore as well. So if there's land patents for the Ritchies out there, which there are many, and if there's land patents for the Moores out there, which is M-O-O-R-E, because that is a part of our estate as well, then we should be looking that up, pulling the land patents, and getting ready to notify that is the land that we're purchasing by way of government sale. But we have to notify everyone in our territory first in terms of the tax assessor and everybody that this is happening. And that's why we say the 1st of May and the 1st of July for these actions to commence. Because that gives us time to pick out and then notify. And do the exchange, the sovereign exchange with Solarium on the public record. And then it should be land that you can manage, because we do have to manage it. It does need to be, you know, don't get 160 acres if you can't cut the grass or whatever you got to do, whatever is going to be done on that 160 acres. You know, don't get 10,000 acres and you haven't, you know, be prepared to take care of whatever it is that you claim. You know. So Justice Yaqub says every 7 years there should be a grand sale. And I'm just thinking about all the other Moors who have to wake up between now and then. You know, there are Moors that are going to be waking up saying, hey, the Moors are getting land, and look at how they're getting it. Look at these documents. Look at what they're doing. Then do they have to wait 7 years?
No, that's when we have to count the smaller level scale, the smaller scale public sale, or even, as you say, you know. And then seven sevens will take us to 49. So at 50, we have another Jubilee.
Yes, Islam. And this time around, I don't know that another Jubilee is going to happen after this, because we're doing 1,000 years of peace here. That's what we're going into right now, 1,000 years of peace. So I don't know. There's a question in the chat, Justice Yaqub, and I'd like to expand on that in response to what you're saying. You're saying every 7 years? And what would a grand sale look like? The difference between the 7-year sale and what we're doing every day is just what you call it.
Alex had me round.
You call it a grand sale.
Wait just a little bit. Can I try that?
You just call it a grand sale, and okay, it's a grand sale. But in the interim, there's sales and more sales that are going to be happening, you know. It's, you know, Moors, I just think that Moors should always have access to getting land all the time. But it needs to be done in an orderly fashion, like what we're saying here. So, yes, we can do a grand sale every 7 years. We can do a grand sale once a year. And the only difference between that and what we're doing, what we will be doing on a daily basis, is you just call it that, a grand sale. You just say, okay, we're having a grand sale, and that will bring attention to the processes that we're doing on a regular basis, that we're, you know, continuing to perfect on a regular basis. That's the only difference that I can see in a grand sale and what we're putting this in place for. Because the whole estate is always going to be a part of what we're governing. The whole estate. Okay. Are there any other questions or comments about that, or any other light that anyone wants to shed on that, to shine on that piece? Okay. Section 4 says, and be it further the law that no lands which have reverted or which shall hereafter revert and become forfeited to the United States for failure in any manner to make payment shall, after the first day of May 1443, be subject to entry at private sale, nor until the same shall have been first offered to the highest bidder at public sale. Justice Yacoub, I think that addresses what you were asking about, doesn't it? Because it's saying that it has to be offered at public sale first before it goes to private sale. And these are the ones that there was failure to pay. And let me say this about failure to pay more. When we said that the United States Corporation Company, the dead one, was bankrupt, no land has been paid for. That's why we have the authority to do what we're doing now. There has been complete failure to pay for years. For years, no one's been paying for land. Think about that. Fiat is not even real. There was nothing back in it except our consent to use it previously. We don't consent to use it now, and we're continuing to work our way back to who we really are with that. So no land has been paid for. And that's why we have the authority to do what we're doing. And in fact, we have to do it or else that fraud continues. And we get left out because we won't, but that's not going to happen because we're here and we're doing it. Everything has reverted back to the people. We are. And that's why I say we were the original United States. We were the original everything and everyone. We were the original Europeans. We were the original everything. And everything has reverted back to us. So that is what we're doing now. It's just preparing according to the law. Okay. It says here, and all such lands which shall have reverted before the said first day of May 1443, and reverted, which shall then belong to the United States, together with the sections before the first and parts of sections, heretofore reserved for the future disposal of Congress, which shall, at the time aforesaid, remain unsold, shall be offered at public sale to the highest bidder, who shall make payment therefore in half-quarter sections at the land office for the respective district, on such day or days as shall by proclamation of the President of the United States be designated for that purpose. And all lands which shall revert and become forfeited for failure of payment after the said first day of May 1443 shall be offered in like manner at public sale at such time or times as the President shall by his or her proclamation designate for the purpose provided, that no such land shall be sold at any public sales hereby authorized for a less price than $200 an acre, nor on any other terms than that of cash payment. Okay, cash payment. And we know that fiat is not cash. And all the lands offered at such public sales and which shall remain unsold at the close thereof shall be subject to entry at private sale in the same manner and at the same price, with the other land sold at private sale at the respective land offices. This is, again, Justice Yacoub specifically, and then to all the more where it says that the President shall designate when these sales happen. We are all the presidents, so we can all agree on how often we want the land sales to happen. It's our land. So we can determine that now, or we can determine it at a future meeting, whichever you prefer. And again, yes, Islam.
I think we could add a little dictionary at the end of the act that, at the end of this document that states who the president is.
Okay, we can do that. I'll say this about that. Our ancestors never meant for us to have one leader. We have leaders of processes, you know, and that's why. Well, and that's another reason why we said everyone put the affidavit on the public record that you're the president. Everyone do it. Everyone, almost do it, and that you're the postmaster, and that you're the secretary for sovereign state, and that you're the law enforcement, and all of that. Everyone put it on the public record. We have, and that you're the currency controller, because we get a lot more done when we focus on the processes and the estate as opposed to people, individuals. We get a lot more done when we just that. And I'll tell you this: even the foreign hybrids are saying that Washington D.C. never should have happened. And the more I thought about that, they're right about that. That there should have never been anyone there saying that they're the president over everything and everyone. But when they came here, they didn't have that. That thing was as punishment for the Moors who were sleeping and amalgamating. You know, we can look in the ancient records and see that anytime and I'll say the children, but that's not really a thing, because we're the only people, really. But every time we said we want a king, the ancestors would give us one as punishment, and that king would have us living like we were living in, like what we coming out of, even though we know we're the heirs. So, who is the president? Everyone, all Moors. If you walk into a room full of Moors and you ask who's in charge, and we said this from day one, all the Moors should stand up and say, we are. We're all in charge. And that way, also, you can't just do like they did the Prophet Noble Jew Ali. He left the stage, and there goes 100 years down the drain, you know, and I won't say down the drain, but, and here we are, rising now. When our prophet was here, we could have risen then, but I guess that wasn't the time that our ancestors had set. And our prophet even said in the 2000s, the Moors are going to come into their own. He knew that. So, yeah, we don't have one president. We are all the precedents. In other words, everything else grew from our seed. And we can pronounce it president, or we can pronounce it precedent, which means to come before. And you know what, Justice Yaqub, I am okay with putting at the end of this document that all Moors are the president. Is there anyone who is in objection to that? All Moors are the president? That's a great point, Justice Yaqub. All your points are great, by the way. All of them are great. It'd be nice to have some more input, because there's almost 50 people on this call. And we could use a little more input from some other of the Moors who are on the call as well. And for those who don't feel comfortable, we just say, yes, Islam Empress. She said she just needs time to think. Yes. Hey, you know what? I get it, because We are not used to doing this type of legislation, this type of governing together. Islam mobility.
Raymond Bay L here. I agree. I don't think we need to appoint anyone any such titles or whatnot, because that's not necessary. If we do everything as a nation, I mean, we need to do everything as a nation. We don't, nobody. It's not a dictatorship. This is not, So basically, we just have to vote like we've been doing on everything. So with a presidential candidate, you won't be voting. So no, we don't need a president. I yield.
Ooh, you just don't know how that just hit my true center and just resonate like a tuning fork. We don't. We are fully competent and capable to do this together without, yes, oh, Justice Morpheus said that. He said we move like a beehive. That'll work too. How often do we vote? That question came up in the chat. As often as necessary. If we see some laws and some benefits and things that we need to put in place, which we're going to be voting very often, actually, because there's so much that so many more need to have.
Islam?
So, Islam, Ember.
I have a little bit of a delay. I am of the, I can't say overstanding because I'm not sure yet, that the way our governmental has been set up is that the women are the council or the consuls and the decision makers, and we appoint our men as our kings or somewhat of appointment to help us get things done. I'm not sure what they would be because I really don't know much yet. So that's what I have kind of gathered, that the way our governmental structure was set up. And it was through the women, like the beehive. The women are the one who have the children, and then everyone else brings all the information, and then the women decide what is, what we all should do, and then there's some type of, I guess, a vote from all, and then our nobles carry out those laws. So am I incorrect in in those thoughts? Islam. Thank you.
If I may.
You are correct. That is how our ancestors did government. I think that where we are now in the process, that is manifesting organically and naturally, and we don't have to put labels on one another. It's happening where, for example, I'm a matriarch and I'm coordinating, okay, not leading the Moors. I'm not leading the Moors. No one leads the Moors, period. And anybody that jumps up and tries to lead the Moors, they soon find out that you cannot lead a bunch of sovereigns. But coordinating the process, the matriarchs coordinate and coordinate. And as we grow, organically it's happening already, where the matriarchs are coming together and deciding some things and putting some things together, and then when we put it out on the public record, the nobles have just as much say in it as we have, and then we implement together. We all implement together. The matriarch and patriarch piece, it will organically happen if everyone just keeps clearing energy and we keep our nation and our state and our government first. The way that it was meant to be will happen automatically. It will. No one will, and then we'll honor one another, and it will be like we're moving together. It's going to look just like that, moving together.
Islam. Oh, okay. Over here in wait a minute. Okay. All right. This is the land of Nod, otherwise known as New York. And what we had here was the Iroquois Confederation. And the mothers was in charge, the nobles. And they appointed their sons the lords. That's where we get landlord from. And they had to govern that land for their mothers. Mothers tell them what to do, they do it. That's our culture. I don't know about the other parts of Morocco, but over here, that's how it was.
Yeah.
The Seneca,
it was like that everywhere.
The Odeonta, the Mohawk, those nations, the Iroquois, they created the Constitution, the Great Law of Peace, which went into become the Constitution. Yeah. So the sister was right. But what you're saying is correct, sister, is that we got to get our minds back to where we came from. Sons got to understand, we got to listen to the mother. And mother's got to be on point.
Yeah.
So we can move.
Yes.
And we got to protect our mothers.
Listen. Yes.
Yes.
I'll be quiet.
I lay the floor.
Islam, yes, I agree. We are the protectors of the matriarch.
Thank you, Noble.
Yes.
Islam.
In every culture, if you look back in history, every culture. I guess I'm speaking over someone.
Hold on for just a moment. There's a little bit of noise coming from somebody's background.
Wait a minute, why am I?
Go ahead, Nobility.
Oh, as I was saying, remember L here. In every culture, if you look back in history, this is the way it was. You know, you had the matriarch. It's just like someone put in the chat, a beehive. You know, you had the queen. Although, you know, for lack of a better word, because we don't use that word queen, but still, we had the queen, and basically, we were the protectors of the queen, of the hive. You know, and the matriarch is, you know, the preeminent person. You know, and it can always be that way. No matter how you look at it, you know, they say it's a man's world, but it's never been a man's world. It's just that's the way they made it. So, are you?
Ooh. That's some energy right there. All of that. I am of the knowing that, and I learned this from my mother. I'm of the knowing that when the matriarchs are honorable and thinking clearly and doing what needs to be done, that organically and naturally, that which is natural will manifest, including those things that were just mentioned. Yes, you all are correct. We have always been matriarchal. And it was only in our captivity that patriarchy came into play. And we're not downing that. We're not downing it. But this era that we're in now, that has changed. And so we have to stay, the matriarchs have to stay on point. And even when we, you know, if we have some downtime, the sons are there. Boom. The nobles are there. Boom. So that there's always, and this is a phrase that I heard from our Grand Chief, but we have to keep it in the forefront. But that there is always continuity of government. No matter what happens, the government must go on. No matter what happens, our nation, our state must be speaking forward, putting the law forward, governing. And we can take a look at the Europeans through all of this stuff and see that they are, you know, the example that they've given in terms of being relentless about making sure that things keep going, you know, and they'll make sure things keep going. They were making sure things keep going. Let me speak in the past because that is in the past, while we stand. matriarchal while we were standing, and now we're standing. So, yeah, I agree. We are matriarchal. This is a matriarchal era. But the matriarch, to whom much is given, much is required. Much is required. And that doesn't mean that matriarchs have to be perfect every day, because we're not. But we gotta stay governing. We have to stay governing. And that's one thing that I've determined, you know, from my perspective, that we're governing. We're not going to be governing. We are governing. And this is the perfect time for us. And that's why I keep saying it's a wrap. This is our time. And when I say our, it means all of ours. This is our time. This is Jubilee that we're actually activating. And let's do it, you know. So, Section 4, did we read Section 4? Or did we finish reading Section 4?
We finished Section 4.
Okay. So this actually talks about, you know, the land reverting back. Ultimately, with regard to the land reverting back to us, which is the state, and the states united, which is all Moors, and all Moorish states and governments, the land goes back to the people. In reality, the land never leaves the people. We put these things in place as a matter of order so that there's no chaos in us moving forward. But the land never leaves the possession of the people, and that's why previously no one made title. Only we have the authority to make title, to create titles, because it's always going to be ours. So, Section 5, are there any other questions or comments with regard to Section 5? Section 4, rather.
Islam, I have a question. My question is, are we going to put anything on the record or in our documentation against the builders that's building here on the land, the same as the outcome for the, like the document you put for the telephone companies, the cellular companies, so the builders can turn over new property within a 15-day, 25-day, or however many days you want to give them period of time to a Moorish indigenous person since they're already built here on the land?
We are going to put some executive orders in place as together, all of us together are going to put executive orders in place for any of the needs of the Moors, especially our focus right now is land and property so that Moors cannot think that they're homeless on their own land. So the answer to your question is yes. We are going to specifically address that process, the builders and all of them, because here's the issue, Empress, or not the issue because it's not an issue. We have to know, Empress, that when we put the right documents on the public record, the builders work for us, and they can start building what we state that needs to be built. So the builders are not our enemies. We don't have any enemies. The only enemy that we really ever had was dead corpses, dead corporations that were animated and running around doing things. And to me, that's not even an enemy. We just put it in its place. So the builders are not against us. No one is against us when we speak properly, when we speak the law and be the government, be the state, and know that no one has any positions but us. Everyone else is custodians. The builders are not builders. We're the builders. The builders are custodians of the building process, period. They're not even builders. They're not even builders.
Islam.
They are in the office of the builder. They are custodians in the office of the builder. And every chance I get to say that about any of them, I'm going to say it. If you call them a judge, I'm going to say, no, they're not a judge. They're in the office of the judge. You're the judge. You're the builder. Yes, so the answer is yes. We're going to address each and everything that has to do with our land. And that's why governing is ongoing. We could do this for the next 1,000 years and still not address every issue on the vast estate. So that's next. That's one of the things that we will do over the next few days, weeks, months, as we see it necessary. Islam.
Yeah, it may. I'm not too sure if other persons understood that Section 4 states without the payment there's reversion. If you're using fiat, then you never made a payment. That means the land. Well, I mean, it was always ours, but it's actually written and can be presented that this land is ours.
That's good. That's good. That's great. That you got that part, nobility, and pointed it out. Let's point that out again. The land was always ours because they never made a payment. They never made a payment. That's why they couldn't create a title. It shall hereinafter revert and become forfeited to the United States for failure in any manner to make payment. That's why I love this document. Yes, they do. In the chat, Justice Consul, he says, do the matriarchs have to reclaim nationality to govern? Yes. Because citizens can't govern, corporations can't govern, any of that. Yeah. Yes, Justice Raymond, and if they try to govern when they're not the Moors, what starts in fraud stays in fraud. And then you start seeing corpses trying to throw them in jail and stuff like that because they're not the Moors. But if you'll notice, we're putting things out on the public record and all of that, and there it is, because it's the truth. So, yes, this is documentation that you can use in your affidavits, Moors. Okay, and that's why we're doing all that we're doing. This document will be under this video on YouTube at Like Tajiri Bay. There'll be two of these documents under the video. One of them will have my autograph on it, and the stamps and seals of the witness court, which is these. Okay, it'll have these on it, and then the other will be this document so that you can edit it and put your own sovereign autograph on it, and whatever else you want to put on it. Okay. Just one moment. Just one moment. Can you hear me? Okay. Yes. So, let's see. Part 5, Section 5. And be it further the law that the several public sales authorized by this law shall respectively be kept open for 2 weeks and for 2 weeks no longer. And the recorders for the land office and the receivers of public money shall each respectively be entitled to 300 dalarium for each day's attendance thereat. I said 300 dalarium per day for those who record the land, who per day, for those who are the recorders of the land and the recorders of these exchanges. That amount will be paid by the government. So what do you all think of that amount? $300 a day for those who record the land, documentations and things, because we're going to need those who are going to be recording. Is that amount a good amount, or does anyone have a suggested amount otherwise? I'll yield the floor
good
here.
amount, I feel, and the three is a great sacred number.
Islam.
So Islam, we should have a demographics team then? Is that what you're saying?
That position is going to be like the county recorder or the tax assessor, either one, county recorder or tax assessor.
Islam, thank you.
Islam, and then Empress Danielle says it's always up for change. Let's start with 300. That's a good idea. Also. We can start, and again, these laws that we're putting on the public record, we will revisit them again as things happen, as we're governing the land, as it comes up. It's going to behoove us to look back at what we said and ensure that we're staying in alignment with it. And that's why all of us must, we're coming here together to have these discussions. This is congressional legislation that we're putting on the public record. This is the law that we're putting on the record. And so we need to be able to come back and look at it, and we can make amendments to it and changes to it as we see fit as a Congress. Are there any objections to 300 per day for those who are recording the land exchanges?
Islam, Raymond Bay again. I think that's a good idea as far as, but like I'm not sure who said it, but geographical, because we have moors all over the land, and other lands as well. So yes, I think we would have to put a council together in each territory, in order to put people in place to take care of these different things. But I guess this here is more or less just starting. So basically, yes, we're gonna, I'm assuming, vote on it, as the time goes by. So because geographical wise, yes, you can't vote on something in Phoenix that happens in Michigan. So I yield.
Mm-hmm. Yes, as part of this document, we're putting this on the public record. So, and it's for all the lands and all the territories. So we kind of took that into consideration in stating the 300 dalarium per day. Are there any other either objections or
Islam?
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. I just want to understand what the 300 per day exactly covers. This is Empress.
Yes, Islam Empress. So the 300 will be for those. It would just be for those who are working, those Moors who are Moors or citizens, but Moors have priority. The Moors who are working to record these land exchanges, because the state, the state has to, every land exchange must be properly recorded, and that's part of the fail-safe that we were talking about earlier. You know, where honor is concerned.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just needed a little clarity.
Yes, Islam. So, and I know I could be a little long-winded sometimes when I'm answering. I just always try to make sure that I dot all I's and cross all T's.
Okay.
It says, so Empress, listen carefully to me about that. I think you're thinking about that from a perspective of having a certain amount of debt. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Let's look at it, and we can always build into what we're talking about. We can always build into it as a cost of living increase of some kind or something like that. For right now, I think we're just establishing the general basis.
Okay.
And then from there, and then Empress Shatali put something in the chat about in San Francisco that's a low amount. She said that that's poverty in San Francisco. So let's get this on the public record. I agree with you, Empress, for depending on the standard of living. But we have to remember all debt is not here. And we're prepaying for everything.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Let's do the math on that, Empress Shatali, because
that's a lot of money. Yes.
I think
a lot of
money.
money.
I think that's enough. If Empress Danielle's math is sound, and I believe it is, but let me just trust, but verify. So let me just get my little calculator.
Yes,
that is. But I guess the point I was trying to make is that it's not about the wage. It's not about getting the wage, because you have the ability to print your own dollarium. Okay, this is just a siphon to help with what you're doing for the government.
Okay, so actually, go ahead, Empress.
I'm sorry. When you mentioned being debt-free, okay, I can pocket all that. It's a different scenario when you're debt-free. So.
Yeah, it is a different scenario when you know that public utilities are public and that we are not taxed and that we're the creditors. All of that comes, even when we apply the dynamics of the system without the ability to print dollarium, even if we apply the dynamics of the system and then put in our creditor status where we're not taxed and that utilities are public and that we're all working in government service, so things like cell phones and things are appropriated. When you put those pieces in place, it's similar to, those that were doing business as CEOs and finance people and all of that, where everything was wrapped up in the work that they do. There's an expense account for that. It's like, it was kind of like being in the military. If you've ever been in the military, you know that you have a per diem every day. Per diem takes care of food and everything, food and lodging and everything. And then you have a phone, and then you have whatever expenses you need, and then you have your overage, your whatever you make over and above that. So actually, yeah, it says $9,000 for 30 days. I think that would actually be, if it's a 5-day work week, then it would be $6,000 a month. But it depends. If you're on travel, then that's going to go for a whole month. It will be $9,000 because that's how they did it in the military. It didn't matter whether it was nights, weekends, whatever. It's still going to be $300 per day. True.
Islam. Yes, I agree. But
yeah,
this is the government work that we're trying to establish here. And for the most part, it's a 7-day-a-week job. You know, what we do is not, because some people can only work on, you know, when they can work. This is ongoing for a long, long time until we get everything where we want it, where we need it to be. I yield.
Yes, yes, yes. 7 days a week, and that's waking up at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning trying to get things done. Whew. Okay. So, are there any objections? Empress Chatali, does that help with regard to what you put in the chat? See, the creditors write off a whole lot of stuff. There's a lot of benefits. Creditors even have clothing allowance. And things like that. Cell phones and things like that are what they call de minimis fringe benefits. De minimis fringe benefits. So, Empress Chatali, are you there? Can you hear me? If you're talking, we can't hear you. I'm hearing static come from your line.
This is Beats by Dre's headphones.
Okay. We can't hear you, Empress Chatali.
Okay. Now.
That's better.
Okay. But yes, I did hear you, and I did work per diem before, so I got a little taste of that. And when you put it that way, it's like, okay, so you know, you're just pretty much pocketing everything. You don't want for nothing. So, yeah, 300 a day, beautiful. No matter where you are, when so much of our necessities are taken care of. So yeah, I love it. I do.
Yeah. And remember, we're prepaying for property and things like that. We have to prepay that up front, and we can do that with Delaria. So, are there any other questions, comments? And we're not taxed again, you know.
Islam. I just want to state that I view every time I get something in return for my work or whatever is compensation, because I'm being compensated for my energy and my time. And so we have to start looking at how we use our words, because I was reading the Holy Quran and the first chapter, and it was speaking about the plane, the soul plane rather. And I did some research and Googling, and the soul plane is different from the mind plane, and it's a higher elevation. So when we understand we're uplifting the fallen humanity, we are currently in the mind plane. So uplifting fallen humanity would be going up into the soul plane, and it's a different vibration, a different understanding, it's a different everything. And so that's where we're all working towards as far as what we are, regardless of your understanding at the moment. That's where we're going. Yeah. Islam.
Things get better for us when we honor our foremothers and forefathers, period. And so, yes, compensation is actually the proper word for what that is. It's not wages, it's not income, it's compensation. So, yes, so it says, and the recorders for the land office and the receivers of public money shall each respectively be entitled to 300 dinars for each day's attendance thereat. So do we have any objection at all to the wording there for that particular piece? Any objections to the language? Okay. We'll go on to part 6, which is section 6, which is the last section. It says, and be it further the law that in every case hereafter where preference to 2 or more persons shall apply for the purchase at private sale of the same tract at the same time, the recorder shall determine the preference by forthwith offering the tract to the highest bidder. This law shall amend as necessary by the Congress assembled. And again, when we're talking about persons, remember more that we are the fiduciaries, we are the living fiduciaries for natural persons. Natural persons is the all caps or the in capitis minutiae minimum. Those are instruments. Those are not us. Those are instruments that we use to get these types of benefits and to proclaim land and all of that. Okay? And then it says here, just as Shaku put in, we did get a consensus and no objections to putting all Moors are the president at the bottom of this document for clarification. And we'll just put clarification. All Moors are the president. And I put this here. It's not approved yet, though. We want to go ahead and look back over the document and take a vote on it, because we did say we were going to take a vote on this this law today. So what we'll do is go ahead and there were no objections. Were there any objections to any? Because we didn't hear any objections per se. We did hear competent discussion about, and we did make changes according to the competent discussions that we had. But we didn't hear any objections to the document or to the sections, the different sections. So let's do the yays first, and then we'll do the nays after that. So for the ayes, I and yay are the same. They mean yes. So if you would please at this time, we will take a vote on this law. If you would, star 6, state your appellation and your territory, and yay or aye for yes, and nay or no for no. Islam.
Islam. State territory, yay.
Empress Aisha L. Michigan territory, yay.
Islam, Angel Bay, Swampamac, yay.
Carolina, Wiggins, Hill, Alabama territory, yay.
Carla L. Bay, Virginia territory.
Bay territory, yay.
Raymond Bay,
Carla L. Bay,
Michigan territory, yay.
I'm sorry. Empress Carla first, and then the noble who just spoke after her. Empress Carla, go ahead.
Empress Carla from Virginia Territory. Yes. Yay. Thank you.
And the noble who just spoke.
Michigan Territory. Yay.
Justice Frank Gill, Pennsylvania Territory. Yay.
Justice Malika Bay, Illinois Territory. Yay.
Willis Smith, Mississippi Territory. Aye.
See how badly that cat is freaking out.
I hear.
Oh, I'm talking about the way.
R.A. Devon Roswell L, Detroit Territory. Yay.
Islam, James Michael, Illinois Territory. Yay.
Islam. She Columbia. Canada Territory. Yeah.
Islam. Winston Patrick L, Minnesota Territory. Yeah. Islam. Dawood Bilal Ibn Yusuf Zula Bay, Swamponic Territory. Yay.
Just put it right there. On the card. The hell out of one of those cats.
Stop abusing the cat.
Islam. Vania L, Massachusetts Territory. Yes.
Islam, thank you.
Islam. Baker Elma Asapi Bay. North Carolina Territory. Islam.
Islam, Musa Jubei, Tennessee Territory. Yay.
Islam. And then there are some in the chat, Empress Danielle, Robin, New Jersey Territory, yay. There's also Justice C. Petite L, Michigama Territory, yay. And Justice Morpheus, we have you. Maryland Territory, yay. Justice Consul Bay, UK Territory, yay. Okay. And I am Sovereign Living Justice like Tajiri Bay, Washington Territory, yay. No problem. Messiah L, Boston Territory, yay. Fiduciary. She votes yay. Did we get everyone's vote? We want to be sure that we record all the votes.
Islam?
Yes, Islam members.
I'm not sure if my vote was counted because there were voices over my voice. And Justice Cynthia Ann Bay, Khalifa Territory, yay.
Islam, thank you, Empress. And yes, we did get, we got your vote recorded. Thank you for making sure. Now, we heard, are there any other votes? Any nays or noes? Any objections to the document? We want to ensure that we hear from everyone.
Yeah, this is Yaqub Ali. I still object to the, not to the entire document, of course, but I object to the private sales, you know.
The private sale.
Yeah, that's all. But
Okay.
everything else is good.
Okay, so we do have a majority that has voted in favor of the document. We can continue to look at that, Justice Yaku. And again, as we stated earlier, we're always going to come back and revisit the things that we put on the public record and make amendments to them and changes to them as the situation, as our estate manifests. And so I have no doubt that what you're saying is at some point something may come up. And if it does, we will come back and specifically take a fine-tooth comb and make sure that we delineate and parse and put more clarity, as much clarity as possible. I call it splitting hairs, but it's necessary for us and for all that we're doing because we're masters at that. And it needs to be done. So we will continue. We're going to keep our eyes on it, and as this process unfolds. So thank you so much for speaking. It is absolutely imperative that we hear and know what each other is really, really thinking about the things that we're putting out here. Okay, the laws and things that we're putting out, so that we okay, and then so let's go ahead and solidify this vote onto the public record that we have I would say a unanimous vote of yes, but with one reservation. Is that appropriate to say, Justice Yaku? With one reservation.
Yeah, that's just I'll say I abstain. I'm not against, you know.
Okay, yes, abstain. Okay. We have one abstain, and I counted approximately 26 yays and one abstain. So the vote does pass for this document going on the public record. And again, even the abstain, we want to hear so that as things happen later, we can come back and fine-tooth comb. And we have time. We definitely have time to come back and look again. Brother Smith Bay says yay, and so that's about 27 yays and one abstain in the chat as well. So with that being said, this sovereign justice stands as law. Now, we have about 7 minutes to left. Are there any other questions or comments with regard to the things that we have discussed thus far and the votes that we've taken in the document? Okay. I wanted to just point out a couple of things really quickly. We've not spoken about this piece in the past, but in our minds, I know in my mind, I'll just speak for me, in my mind, I always thought that, you know, when you go and someone hands you cash, quote unquote, what we thought was cash, and it had those serial numbers on it, that was not a big deal, okay, with regard to cash and the passing forth of cash, because the document mentioned cash, okay. But it makes complete sense, and I found out recently that even if you went to an ATM and in your sleep and you pulled out Federal Reserve debt notes, that Federal Reserve debt note could be tracked directly to you, and that there were bonds created every time you did that. A lot of us were not aware of that. I was not aware that a treasury bond was created first when the Federal Reserve debt note was first printed. There was a bond created. But then with every use of that note, there was another bond created, and it was attached to the ones who were pulling that out of the ATM machine. So whenever you hear them, economists and all of them talking about what they call M1 or M2 or M3 in terms of in economic terms, M1 has always been the most plentiful treasury bond, type of treasury bond issued. And M1 was always the Federal Reserve debt note. Those are the most plentiful bonds that they were creating. And it's because the heirs kept going to the ATM, and that's a contract too. Now, again, don't feel any type of way about doing that, because we're working our way out of having to do that. Okay? So for those who use Federal Reserve debt notes, don't worry. First of all, we already know that everyone is pretty much deprived and living beneath their rights and their privileges. So we know that. But just wanted to point that out, that those serial numbers that are on the Federal Reserve debt note, it created a bond every time you would go and pull it out of the ATM because you had a contract with the bank. And that's why termination of all corporate contracts is so important. So that should you have to do that there's no debt created from you doing that and having to continue, but our job is to move away from all of that. We have to move away from it because debt cannot be used, and we see it there in the law. Again, this document comes from the public laws, and it states in there that debt cannot be used. And when they said credit, they were talking about getting something buy now, pay later type of credit, which is not the credit that we use or have, because that's debt. They changed the definition of credit. So we are putting the proper definition on the word credit and using our own sovereign credit to prepay for everything that we get. Okay,
Islam.
In the manner that this law is put there on the public record. Islam Empress.
I have a question. Was the SWIFT system operating the same way as the ATMs?
No, the SWIFT system operated very much like email, a glorified email system. Glorified email.
So there were no bonds created when you used SWIFT?
Yes. But see, individuals didn't really use SWIFT. Institutions, corporations use SWIFT. Corporations use it. So the people would tell the bank to do something, send an electronic funds transfer overseas somewhere, and the bank would use the SWIFT system, not the actual people. But there were bonds created when it was used, and those bonds that were created, something like the SWIFT system, with one transaction, you can create 1,000 bonds, depending on how many people touch that transaction. You can create 1,000 or more than that, really, depending on how many notes are passed back and forth. So that's why we had to go ahead and put a lien on the United States Corporation Company's ability to use that system, and then institute the proper SWIFT system for our banking institutions, etc. Speaking of which, we can see that, you know, in the news, you'll see that in the corporate media, which is really just acting, that they are supposedly taking people off of the SWIFT system. Really, that's them just, all corporate has to go. So remember, our liens remove corporate coverings off of our resources. That's what that looks like. When we say no corporations can use that, because we're going to use it. And we're going to use the real one, not the one you can fake and get to and pull stuff out of. So, yeah. Yeah, thousands of bonds could be created. Thousands and thousands and thousands just off of one exchange, especially if there's a bunch of fiat associated with it. Because, again, each fiat that's put out there as for example, if the SWIFT system sent, if we sent 30,000 to someone overseas and they took 500 out in small notes, small bills, then that's a lot of bonds being created, a lot of debt being created. So having said that, additionally, we talked about the fiduciary. The fiduciary affidavit is extremely important to place on the public record, along with the currency controller affidavit, so that possession of Empire State custodial holdings are properly recorded. And again, the CFR, which is the Code for Federal Regulations, states that the Secretary has determined that the rules and standards of the Comptroller of Currency, the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, and the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation governing the holding of government securities in a fiduciary capacity by depository institutions subject thereto are adequate. So what this is really implying and saying is that the Comptroller of Currency, the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve, and the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, are nothing more than they were previously acting as fiduciary. And then it says here in this second one, accordingly, such depository institutions are exempt from this part with respect to their holding of government securities, either in a fiduciary capacity or their holding of government securities in a custodial capacity. And that's why we say whenever you speak about them, they are custodians in the office of, and you are the currency controllers. You are the Federal Reserve System. You are the governor of that. You are the Federal Deposit Insurance Company, the CEO of that. Okay? We are all that. And the fiduciary document puts that on the public record that says that we can do that. And you can read the rest of these. Such custodial holdings are subject to examination by the appropriate regulatory agency for compliance with such fiduciary requirements. Fiduciaries are the ones who examine custodial holdings. So at any time, we can examine, and we are going to do that. That's another something we're going to put on the public record sometime soon with regard to holdings holdings that other custodians are holding. And you can see what's being implied there. We're going to be looking at our resources. We're going to look at them. We're going to see them. And then one last thing, with regard to bank cards, because this is something that we're looking at I've shown you in the past, I showed you my Moorish government bank card. It has our flag on it. It has my sovereign security number. It has my image on it. It has red writing in red and all lowercase letters, which that will turn to blue, okay, at some point. But I was looking into our cards, our banking cards as we print them up, because that's something that has to come from each one of us. Just like we do our IDs, we'll have bank cards. There is a rule on the record of all vendors, all merchants who accept cards of any kind, whether it be debit cards, ATM, Visa, MasterCard, doesn't matter. They all have a rule on the book. It's called the honor all cards rule. We didn't know that, did we? No, we did not. And I'm going to just place, we will go over this one. We'll go over this in our next meeting, okay? Because we're already at 2 hours now, 3 hours. Yeah, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, we're at 3 hours now. So this is we'll go over this honor all cards rule in our next meeting, as we discuss how we're going to go about using our cards on the land. Justice J. Michael asked a question in the chat. Very good, great question. If you draw from FRNs from the ATM, are you recontracting? If you have not terminated all corporate contracts, then yes. But when you terminate all corporate contracts, then FRNs are no longer FRN. They're not debt notes. They're Federal Reserve notes, but they're not debt notes. And you can look in, I believe it's 12 U.S.C. 412 that talks about the difference between being able to turn in Federal Reserve debt notes or Federal Reserve notes. Okay. Just make sure that you have the fiduciary document on the public record, because the fiduciary document governs the instrument that they put. The bank the bank didn't do it. The custodians at the bank put a name on the account. We're the fiduciaries of that. We have to terminate all corporate contracts with a corporation claiming that instrument, and then we have to present our own instrument. It looks just like it. And so that way we're not recontracting if we go to an ATM and pull out Federal Reserve notes, okay? I don't, as often as possible, I don't pull out Federal Reserve notes out. The last time I did that was probably about, let me see, it's been about a year and a half. And when I did it, even then, it was to assist them more who had come a very long way here. It was when we had our meeting here. It's been about 2 years, probably October, where I went to the ATM to give them something to help them, you know, get something to eat and all of that, and pay for their stay. But I don't do ATMs or anything like that, because I know that at some point, and again, we're not mad at ATMs. We just need the right thing coming out of the ATM. And all we're doing is moving in that direction so that lawful money comes out of the ATM. But in the interim, more who need to go to an ATM, go to an ATM. Just make sure that you put the fiduciary document and a termination of corporate contracts on the public record. You know, because ATMs are a part of our vast estate too. We just have to overturn, we have to keep those money changers tables overturned, you know. And then we're working now to move into the direction of printing proper lawful money. We know that our ancestors had lawful money, and I already see where the lawful, how the lawful money comes into play. We bring it into play like we're doing. So, with that being said, Islam nobility.
Yes, you started saying something about the card, and I didn't catch the last part on that. Can you?
Oh, I just said that we'll talk about the cards in our next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. Our next meeting will be, today is Thursday, it'll be Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Same place, same time. Okay. Because there's some things I want to show you about our cards to where we should be able to show our card anywhere on our land and they honor it. We'll talk about it because it's beautiful information. It's been the law the whole time, but we had to put the state in place first. And since we put our state in place, and again, more, these things that we're talking about where this honor all cards and all of that, the constitution for your territories, we need them. We need them on the public record. So please, 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 Morris, if you, there were many, there were probably 25 or more, probably more than that, territories that are made known here on these calls. Make sure, Morris, please, every more on this call, please, if you can, go and pull the state of Constitution, put it on our letterhead, put it in blue, and just pull the state of out of it, any capitalism out of it. If you have to put it in all lowercase letters, put it in all lowercase letters, and then autograph it in red with your right red thumbprint, and of course study it, because again, we see things in these that let us know we should have been doing what we're doing right now. And then send us a copy to the government@gmail.com. So that as we put these things in place, that they happen for your territory too.
Islam,
because the proper documentation has been on the public record. Islam nobility.
I'm curious now. I'm in Michigan, and I noticed that you have a Michigan on file already. Do you need everyone from Michigan to send you a file? Because I've studied the Constitution. Yeah, but I know that.
No, but just please study it.
Yes, I got to the point where I think I told you last week that I was copying it and whatnot. Now that I see you have one on file, and it's like I told you, it's 57 pages long. So basically, it can free me up to do something else if I don't have to do it, and you have one.
Yeah, we have it already. Just the Chief of Fidel gave us the copy. He was on top of it as always, because he gave it to us like the day after we first announced it. So we have it, but more than that territory, please study it. Okay. UK Morris, if we could get your Constitution also, that would be perfect. Any one of the constitutions you have there. So and then to the Moore who is speaking in the inbox, if you could please give me a call with regard to what you have going on Monday. If you'll give me a call. County charters. Okay, yes. So with that being said, peace and grand rising to the sovereign, original, indigenous, natural, divine heirs. Islam.
Peace and love.
Grand rising more.
Islam. Grand rising. Peace and love more. Wow.
Grand rising.
Grand rising.
Islam. Islam.
Islam.
Islam, Empress, Raymond Bay L, did you see my text that I sent to you through Messenger?
I might have. This.